Do the trashy pulp novels of the world have anything to offer? Are bestsellers all they're cracked up to be? Here at Terrible Book Club, we explore whether you really can judge a book by its cover, or its ridiculous synopsis. You ever passed a book and thought, ugh, who's reading this? We probably are.
Welcome to episode 43 of the Terrible Book Club. This time we read Crabs, the Human Sacrifice, Book 6 in the Crab series by Guy N. Smith. I'm Paris, and this is Krabby Chris.
Oh, yeah. I'm a little itchy today, Paris. How about you? It's not those kinds of crabs we're talking about, actually, sadly.
No.
We're talking about actual, proper crab-ass crabs.
Yes, crustaceans
Yes.
from the ocean. So if this is your first time tuning into the Terrible Book Club, what we do here is we read books that we assume will be bad based on their cover, title, summary, or some combination thereof. So we're real shallow in the way that we choose books. So
Sure.
we force ourselves to read books that we would never otherwise pick up. And usually this experiment results in a hilariously disappointing read, but once in a while a book comes through that's at least partially subverts our assumptions. So
This ain't one of them.
No, this is not one of them.
I got pretty much what I expected when I read the back cover, and I saw the front cover, which is a giant crab holding a sword or perhaps a really big knife in its claw. It's kind of the scale's kind of hard to determine.
Yeah.
But let's just start off by saying the crabs in this book are cow-sized.
Yeah, there are some that are smaller, but mostly they're enormous. So before we get right into the story, a couple of things. So one, thank you to Reddit user dickdastardly who suggested this book when I asked somewhere on some book thread on Reddit for bad horror books, and thank you to everyone who voted for this and essentially chose the episode. Some listeners voted on it. Everyone wanted this Crabs book. The other option was some not necromancy. What's the fucking dead people stuff? Why can't I think of the word, Chris?
Necrophilia?
Yes, thank you. Jesus, why? Wow, sorry. I got caught in a really bad thunderstorm and got briefly blinded by lightning.
So I guess you're a little bit disoriented for this episode.
Yeah, a little bit.
Someone cast a stun spell on you or something.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you to that Reddit user for suggesting, and thanks for all of our listeners for unanimously choosing the crabs.
Yeah, y'all really wanted to hear about some crabs. Maybe you're all into seafood. I mean, we did that crawfish baby one. We did a mermaid thing before, so seafood's kind of a theme. For a Terrible Book Club. I noticed, I was thinking about this the other day, we're kind of have New England-y themed things in general. Your seafood, I think of vampires in terms of horror to be sort of New England-y themed anyway. It depends on who you're talking about or whatever.
Yeah, unless you're in the Anne Rice universe where they're kind of
exactly.
Southern,
That's kind of where I default cast any non-Transylvanian vampires into, so... Yeah, we're just sticking with the theme here, but this time it's a little bit of a horror thing because it's October. We're trying to be a little spooky over here, and this is definitely a gory book.
Yeah, so content warning before we begin because, hey, third time we're doing this. Look at us being consistent. All right, so before we continue, please note that this episode contains discussion and graphic descriptions of blood and bleeding, crabs, cutting, disease, dismemberment, drugs such as cyanide, cancer, masturbation, ritual sacrifice, sexual assault, regular old consensual sex, generalized violence against humans and animals, and weapons such as guns, knives, and swords.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of this fun stuff in this book, and honestly, I don't think it's necessarily meant to be a highbrow thing, but at the same time, it's not necessarily hitting all the notes I want. If this is supposed to be kind of like a shitty B monster movie from the 70s or something, this wouldn't be the one that I would enjoy watching even on kind of a so bad it's funny level.
Yeah, it's pretty so I'll give you I'm going to read what the summary is for this book. Like, if you look it up on Amazon or at a library, this is what you get. Although, it's admittedly not a summary, but this is what they give as the summary. The girls listened intently. The wetlands were silver and shadow in the moonlight. The salt marsh grasses rustled. Out on the mudflats, curlews called mournfully. The girl shivered. The incoming tide trickled and lapped up hidden creeks. Soon the wildfowl will be winging down, the waders feeding and squabbling at the water's edge. The girl struggled. Despairingly, she pulled at the ropes that held her, naked and spread-eagled, a human sacrifice for the crabs. Huge, eaten away by the mutating disease that doomed them, they were returning, dragging themselves out of the water, intent only on tearing apart and devouring their enemy, man. Yeah, so that's what they give us. It
sounds like a B-movie summary, you know?
Yeah, so what really is going on is that it basically is a torture porn about giant crabs ripping people apart. But there's
a lot of the good parts of the book I would consider to be the parts where crabs are ripping people apart.
Yeah, sadly, that is kind of where the book succeeds, I guess. Because the sort of the backdrop behind all the crab murder is that there's the crabs have weird crab cancer, which I guess is described in one of the other 6 books in the crab series, or 7 books. I don't know.
We jumped in kind of late here, so we might be real loose on the crab lore or whatever.
Well, yeah, except
which is the name of my doom metal band now, by the way.
Crab lore, yeah. It's just like. Dude, you can write so many songs about the fucking moon. Like, that's already a super metal concept. Like, the moon, fucking sea beings. You can make it, like, Lovecraftian. Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Go down
we're
there.
We're developing this. We'll develop this later. Not on the podcast. Don't steal our ideas, please.
Yeah, don't make the band Crab Lore. We'll find you.
It's ours.
Yeah. So, these crabs have this weird, I guess, crab-only cancer. Like, it doesn't seem
Crabser. Crabancer.
Yes. And the subtext, it's not explicitly stated, but the subtext is that humans did something to cause the crabs to get cancer. It's very vague. It's just like, I don't know, people ruin the earth, right? I mean, and they're right about that. I mean, humans ruin other species all the time, and, you know, we ruin our own habitats, never mind that of others. So it's very plausible, like the concept of humans doing something fucking dumb to the external, you know, non-human environment and fucking something up. But, like, they don't give you any details.
I think the idea was that, like, our nuclear radiation testing caused the crabs to become big, but at the same time, that's also what gave them the crab cancer.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. I think they did mention nuclear radiation testing.
Like, that's what made them, I think, once again, not really deep on the crab lore or anything. So I'm kind of, you know, with this part we might be totally wrong on. We're willing to accept that. But then again, this book doesn't really lean on that stuff too much because somehow the crabs are almost like setting dressing. They just kind of appear to attack people whenever it's necessary. And otherwise, like, the problems they cause are resolved without much doings by the main characters in this book.
Yeah.
Which I guess we should introduce them at this point.
Yeah, so yeah, I was just getting to, like, the general story. So these crabs have this, like, horror, they're, like, I guess irradiated mutant crabs, and I don't know, they call it cancer, but if it's radiation, I don't really know what it is. Radiation cancer, sure. It makes them huge, and it also makes them, like, more cerebral, like, they're more intelligent, and they hate human beings, and they only want to, like, torture and eat human beings. Like, sometimes they don't even want to eat them, they just want to rip them apart and fucking, like, destroy them.
Yeah, they're basically like nature's vengeance personified.
Yeah,
or crab-sodified. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And caught up in all of this, there's this vegan animal rights group, which is just called Animal Rights Group.
Yeah, it's like, this is how lazy and shallow this author was being, where they just call their animal rights group Animal Rights Group, like it's a fucking generic store brand evil eco-terrorist organization that you got.
Yeah,
for like 50 cents off.
Yeah, they couldn't have, like, I don't know, come up with fucking anything. I mean, even
they
in
could call themselves Crab Lore, which is a dope name for like a crab-based eco-terrorist group.
All right, so at first, the animal rights group was just a regular animal rights group where they were just like protesting and trying to get people to vote, participate in the government and like maybe vote for candidates who are gonna not vote for laws that test on animals and shit like that, like normal stuff. And then they kind of got co-opted by this dude Pete, who is a total psychopath, sociopath, ? I don't know. And he,
he's literally a cartoon villain.
Yeah, like, he's a very
he's
cartoonish
just evil
villain.
For the sake of being evil.
Yeah, and he takes over the animal rights group of vegans and basically turns them into, like, a crime syndicate where they're just murdering people and torturing them.
Usually it's them dropping the people off to be killed by the crabs, so it's the crabs are doing the murdering, really.
No, I mean, Pete definitely murders some people straight up in this book unassisted by crabs.
Oh, yeah. I think.
And he has this girlfriend, partner, Christine, who is, like, kind of into the fact that he beats the shit out of her and treats her like trash. Like, she's like, yeah, I kind of like this, but then she's also always complaining about it, so I don't know.
Christine's whole character is... I don't understand why she's there other than to make Pete look extra worse or something.
Yeah, I mean, she's just set dressing like the crabs.
She's literally an object to be abused by Pete both physically and sexually and mentally. Pretty much all around in every single way.
Yeah, it's weird though. So Pete is like, I don't know, he's a weird, sadistic asshole, but he doesn't ever have sex with her or do really anything sexual. Like, he just beats her and gets hard and like stands in the moonlight looking cool. I don't know.
Pete is permanently hard of cock. Like, that might as well be his like title, Pete Hard of Dick, because I don't think this dude never has a boner.
Yeah, he's kind of always sexually aroused by anything to do with violence and crabs later on. Like, it starts off with him being turned on by violence, and then it escalates to him just being like turned on by crabs and crab worship because
he wants to be hard like his master's shells.
Yeah. Yeah, so it gets like really out of control when Pete's like, yeah, like at first he's like, yeah, we gotta protect the crabs because of course people are like, hey, there's fucking mutant crabs murdering people, like we kind of gotta do something about this. And so the military and the government are, they're like blockading certain parts of the ocean, they're like tracking the movements of the crabs and they're shooting them when they see them. And Pete is like, no, they can't kill them, they're crabs, how dare they, poor defenseless crabs, even though they're obviously fucking killing machines. Like, I don't get it.
I think Pete's logic is that this is the crabs and nature taking their natural vengeance against mankind who has abused nature and animals for forever. But even the book itself says, like, because it's kind of told from Christine's perspective whenever we're in the middle with Pete or whatever, and it seems to her that Pete just likes to murder, and the animal rights thing is just a shallow excuse to start doing that more.
Yeah, the author straight up says that. Like, it's not even left to the imagination. The author is like, hey, just in case you didn't notice, like, he doesn't actually care about this. Like, yeah, we get it. And then Pete kind of takes things to a new level, and he decides that he's going to worship the crabs, and that they are his
humans
master.
Are disgusting, and so is he. He needs to be more crab-like, or I don't know. He just likes them a whole lot.
There's this weird scene where out of nowhere, like the whole crab worship, crab gods thing starts when out of nowhere he and Christine are in their apartment, and he like sets up this little dead crab like in a cool stance, like probably like on the
real
front of the book.
Amateur taxidermy.
And he makes Christine stand in front of the crab altar naked.
Crab altar now on tour with Crab Lore.
And he makes Christine masturbate, and he masturbates in front of the crab as like he cuts both of their palms and they masturbate with bloody palms to the crab altar, and like I don't understand that.
By the way, like none of this really has it. Like the crabs don't give a shit or anything about being worshipped.
No.
Nothing comes of this except it's just a weird scene to demonstrate how fucking weird Pete is, I guess.
Yeah.
With his hard crab shell dick fantasy. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's literally just like he's evil because he's so evil and he likes to murder to be evil. They try to like make him, I guess, compelling by oh, it's because he's an animal rights guy. But then they undercut that with just them saying, oh, no, he just likes to murder. So, like, why it's not an interesting villain.
No.
Except for the fact that everyone thinks he's kind of indestructible a little bit or something. Like, Christine won't attack him, and she's convinced that if anyone else tried to attack him, he would come out fine. Because he has, I don't know, like, good fight skills for some reason.
Yeah, supposedly he has a black belt in question mark, some martial art. Like that's always all of
Crab
these
Roddy.
books. Yeah, Crab Roddy, yeah. He's got fucking, I don't know.
Crab Maga.
Wow. Well, Krav isn't belted, I don't, or maybe it is. I don't know. Krav's kind of bullshit anyway, but sorry. I have a lot of friends that do Krav, and they're probably going to yell at me for saying it's kind of bullshit, but it's kind of bullshit. Anyway. But yeah, like, anyway, yeah, so he's supposed to be this, like, indestructible, sadistic asshole murderer, and yeah, like Chris said, you don't, I don't know. And it's really weird because very late in the book, Christine is like, oh, he used to be so great, and then like he was changed by this one event, and I'm like, oh fuck, okay, now we're gonna get an explanation. Like, what was he, like, gang raped as a child? Like, did he, I don't know, was he like forced to kill other people or something? No, you know what changed him forever into a sadistic murderer?
What is it?
A bar fight.
Yeah. One bar fight, man. Let me tell you, you're just violent forever after that.
One bar fight, and you become a serial killer, basically, and also
obsessed with crabs.
Yeah, like that made no fucking. I was like, what? A bar fight doesn't. They were like, the author was trying to say, oh, he committed all these violent atrocities during the bar fight and was like really kind of like hyped up on his own fucking juice and like got all like really, I don't know, probably got super hard as well. And like from then
got a boner from his own crab juice.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and from then on, Christine was like, oh, and he never, we never had regular sex again after that. Ugh. And yeah, so whatever, fuck all that shit. Anyway, once Pete decides he's gonna start sacrificing people to the crabs, so his
first target is a rich girl who is the daughter of some, I forget what I think it was like a famous animal butcher, I don't know.
He owned a lot of furs, and he was like a super rich dude, and his daughter Susan Delfore, whatever, I don't know, just kind of like a whatever, a rich kept girl, and she starts dating this ex-military guy, David Knight, and not related to Eric Knight from the last episode.
Sadly, it's with a K this time, so he's a knight in shining armor. You see,
yes,
he's so chivalrous. That he'll kick a girl out of his bedroom, out of his house when she comes crying over because she got into a fight with her parents and she wants to get laid and sleep over. But he's like, nah, babe, just like, it'll be fine. It'll go back. It'll blow over in like a week. And then she gets kidnapped by Pete on the way home and his gang of eco-terrorists. And they strap her up in the woods where the crabs are, and she gets sliced apart a whole bunch by crabs.
Chris, the crabs aren't in the woods; they're in the marshlands.
Whatever.
I think more time is spent describing the marshlands and the various birds that inhabit it than like mostly anything else in this book.
A marsh is just wet woods, okay? So same thing.
It's not really, but yeah, this guy, I don't know, he's just talking about a lot of different kinds of birds, a lot of different kind of marsh grass and other vegetation, and I was
what's that? The name of the grass he kept bringing up? It was like spatina grass or spatula grass or something.
Spatula grass. I don't remember.
He kept bringing up this one specific grass, and I was like, "Is this supposed to like help me or something? Why do you keep bringing up this one kind of grass?"
It was like
indigenous to wherever they are.
I mean, they're in England, but yeah, it was similar to Too Far when we read Too Far. That was something that happened a lot in that book too, where the author was just painstakingly describing plants and like constantly. It was kind of weird. I guess that's
not good world building, man. Like that doesn't really give me much to go by.
But like, the plants now. Anyway. And so yeah, they kidnapped Susan, and like she had only gone on like 2 dates with David Knight or something, and they had sex once, and like, she gets kidnapped, and David Knight is like, I vow revenge. I loved her. I didn't tell her because I was trying to be a man, but
I can't believe I kicked her out. I feel so guilty. Now I have to murder the people that murdered her. It's my revenge quest that is my singular focus.
Yep, so that also is just, like, this really shallow puddle to jump into, which is probably full of crabs, too.
They'll get you. They're waiting.
There's, like, a...
Crab Puddle is the opener for the crab tour, and they're not that good.
And there, meanwhile, while this sort of main storyline is unfolding, there are also a bunch of throwaway chapters that serve no purpose other than to give us snapshots of crab murder with a dash of sex as foreplay. Like, hey, are you gonna have sex in the marshes of England? Well, too bad. You're gonna get fucking dismembered and eviscerated by crabs.
There was really no point. There's just some couple that decides to fuck in the marshes, I guess. And then they get torn apart by crabs. And it's not like they're mentioned later in the book, like their death sets something else off. It's just this one-off, like, crab murder scene for people who dared to fuck outside.
Yeah, and there are several... It's like in each of them, there are, like, several pages for that chapter. There are, what, like 4 of them or something? I don't know. And this book wasn't very long. It wasn't even 200 pages. So there's all this, kind of extra throwaway stuff. And then... There were, I believe, 2 chapters that said at the top, like at the head of the chapter, it was like, as told in, Crab's Book 3, Revenants or whatever. So I think 2 of the chapters actually came from some of the other Crab's books. So
yeah,
how much
that's definitely what happened. I think this might be like a Crab side story. Crab's Gaiden.
Yeah, it's very weird. We haven't even talked about how terrible the writing is in this book. The author needs to describe things at least 2 ways at all times. Everything has a double description. He just loves it. There were some redeeming phrases or sentences, but mostly it was just a bunch of really these like run-on sentences that were just like a bunch of clauses that didn't really go together very well. My first note in the book is actually highlighted the first sentence and said, 2 sentences in, this is already a hot crab fire. Like, it's not great. I'll read you those sentences.
Please do.
The girl's voice was a hoarse, vibrating whisper in the eerie stillness of the deserted supermarket, her strikingly attractive face deathly white in the glow of the single dim light, her lithe body pressed back against a rack of shelves, taut and twisted as though she was trying to wriggle in amongst the jars and cans, hide herself. That is one sentence.
It's a little awkward.
Yeah. Also, 2 sentences later, we get the phrase twin orbs to describe eyes. And for me, that's always like the portent of bad writing to come. Like whenever you see twin orbs in a piece of writing, just turn the other way. Just go back, put it away. Don't
I've
keep
seen
going.
that so many times too. It's just such like an awkward, silly way to describe eyes. It's not artful or anything.
No.
It's just like stupidly reductive.
Yep. He's a little redundant too, like hunting beast of prey. Like, I mean, it's a hunting beast or it's a beast of prey. They both imply hunting, prey. I don't know. Some of the phrases burning into your brain like a tumor scan. Yeah, not a great choice.
I don't even understand what like a MRI scan. Is that Birdie?
I don't know.
Is that hot?
And the other issue I had, which isn't the writer's fault, partially. So it's written. A lot of this has like British UK slang, which I didn't always understand. I mean, I have some British friends, so I understood some of it, but mostly I was just getting confused by some of the phrases and words they were using because it's not really part of like American speech, even though we both speak English. And so that part isn't the author's fault, of course. You know, it's not his fault that I don't understand slang from that part of the world. However, it is his fault that he only chooses random times to write people's speech with accents. So he gives some of the characters, I think, Cockney accents, but like only at random times.
Yeah, there was never a consistency about any of that.
So it was really confusing because everyone was talking normally, and then all of a sudden someone was like, "Oi, blah, blah," and I'm like, "What the fuck?"
He's got a good crab on him, doesn't he?
And yeah, you're just like, "What the fuck?" I'm sure there's an example, but it's later in the book. But yeah, it was confusing for that reason as well. I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. Yeah. So they sacrifice the rich girl, and then David Knight vows
goes
revenge.
on his revenge quest for it. There's other sacrifices that they make because Pete, like, again, he worships the crabs, and that's why they need human sacrifice. There's like a park ranger. There's a wildfowler that they sacrifice to the crabs. At one point, one of their own, like this kid Alex, I think, is like a member of the eco-terrorist crew, and Pete suspects him as like a snitch, and he kind of is, actually. He was about to go to the cops about it, and he gets sacrificed to the crabs at some point. Yep. But they're all honestly just, immaterial window dressing in terms of the plot. They just happen to die.
Oh, sorry, I found my note. Supposedly Pete is a black belt in karate.
Oh, okay. Can we actually, while we're talking about Pete, here's a passage that I found pretty indicative of like how apparently like Pete's a little bit superpowered.
I was gonna say, read about the sword. Read about the sword. It's
not the sword yet. It's actually about Pete destroying a gun with his bare hands.
What?
Yeah, like it's Wally the Wildfowler who had a gun like to shoot ducks and shit.
Oh, I do remember
that. And
Pete
comes upon him, and he at one point in there, he gets the gun pointed at him, and then fucking guns. Pete grasped the Magnum by the barrel, swung it up, and brought it crashing down stock foremost on the iron-hard ground. Woodwork splintered, the steel action bent. He used his foot as a lever, wrenched barrels and stock apart, 1,000 pounds worth of wreckage in each hand. That's one gun that'll never murder again. He tossed the remnants over the seawall before he murdered this guy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. How do you just
tears
destroy...
apart? I guess it's an older gun that's made out of wood still, but like with all the metalwork on it, he just fucking rips it apart.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very believable. Oh yeah, and Pete, so Christine at the beginning of the book tells us about Pete's trademark sword called the Executioner.
Yes.
But
the edgelordiest sword in the fucking world.
Exactly, yeah. It's the edgelordiest sword in the world. I mean, sword, edgelord.
Yeah.
Because not only is it named something stupid, like who he named the sword, but it's like a... All right. So if any of you grew up in America in the 90s, I'm going to bet that you probably went to a mall at some point. And in that mall, there was probably a kind of sketchy store that sold really shitty weapons. But when you were a kid, you thought they were super cool. And some people you knew probably saved up a bunch of money to buy these like shitty fake swords and daggers and like nunchucks and shit, right? Well, that's what this sword is. It definitely 100%
sounds
sword.
like that shit. I forget if it says where he found it or whatever, but my headcanon is that he stole it from one of those shops like that, and he just thought it was super cool.
Yeah, and because Christine talks about how it has fake gems in it, like it's not real, and she's super afraid of it, but she talks about it, and the way she describes it makes it seem like, yeah, it's one of those like shitty decorative swords, but he's able to cut someone's head off with it with like 2 swings, which doesn't seem right to me. It's real dumb. I don't know. I'm like going through my notes here. Oh, that's right. One of the couples that exists solely to get murdered by crabs, it's like this couple, and they had just gotten engaged, but they'd only been having sex for 2 months.
In a cars.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very strange. Man, I made a lot of notes in this book. I didn't remember that. Oh,
How about, can we talk about how anytime the crabs appear, like click noises in italics start to appear?
Hey,
but
Chris,
sometimes like the way the
click.
onomatopoeia works is not just click click, it goes click click clickety click.
Because
and I have a bone to pick
Chris.
about the word clickety being used in a threatening way.
Well,
but like by crabs approaching me?
They're British crabs, Chris. They're still going to be polite while they're about to murder you. Click, click,
I see.
click.
I see. Then also, while we're talking about italics, there's like some lines in this book that are written in italics for effect, I guess. And I just think that's a really dumb thing to do, to like try to be extra scary by putting some things in italics or something. It doesn't have any effect on me. And I don't know why you do that.
Oh, right. Pete gets so mad at Alex, that guy that was part of the group who was like informed on him, because he ended up having sex with Christine, and of course Pete walks in and he says, "You dared to touch the executioner, eh? Fucking my woman is one thing, but soiling warrior steel is another."
What a fucking dork. Holy shit.
Yeah, like, how can you take the main character, the main
crabacter.
I can't talk.
The main crabacter.
Yeah,
how about I read, actually, since this is like one of the better parts, how about I read the scene where that couple that fucks in cars but decides to take it to the marshes one time gets attacked by crabs? So in this section here, the crabs have already happened upon them and they are going for his girlfriend first. And suddenly movement returned to Louise. A screamed first. A piercing yell that vibrated the peaceful summer afternoon cost her 3 precious seconds during which she might have escaped. Too late. She turned to run, stumbled, a vicious pincer closed over her left ankle, pulled her down. Now she was hysterical, trying to claw a handhold in the soft grass as the creature dragged her towards it, flaying wildly. A brittle snap. Brian saw what happened in a moment of revulsion and horror, saw her foot severed as easily as a pair of strong pliers might have snapped a length of thin, taut wire. Blood sprayed, spattered the naked, writhing girl, showering her attacker. He looked about him for a weapon of some kind, a stone or a stick, but salt marshes are peculiarly devoid of such objects. Just Spartina grass and marsh daisies, not so much as a piece of rotten flotsam in sight. Helpless, naked, he ran to Louise, grasped her outstretched arm. She had gone crazy, was fighting him, screaming, frothing at the mouth. He got a hold on a hand, pulled. Her body became taut, resisted him. The crab had secured her other leg in a firm, razor-sharp grasp. The macabre, nightmarish tug-of-war that lasted perhaps 5 seconds, and then her leg was gone, amputated just below the knee. And it goes on like that for another couple pages, essentially. And I think that's not bad horror writing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's fine. I feel like this would be better. This whole thing would have been better if he just hadn't tried to explain it and write a story about people around it. Like, it would have been way better if it was just like, these horrible scenes of people getting dismembered and like eviscerated by crabs, and then little small hints about like, oh shit, the crabs are fucked up because people like poisoned them. Oh fuck, it's like nature getting, revenge on people for being shitheads. Like, that would have been way better. And maybe
something they learned from that could help them fight the crabs or something.
Right.
But, I mean, spoiler alert, Paris, the crabs just end up getting shot by the military and then dying of cancer on, like, off-page almost at the end. It's like, oh, by the way, the crabs just kind of died out and solved themselves. The end.
Yep. Really efficient.
We should get to the point, I guess, where David Knight, I guess.
No. David Knight. I don't know.
Yeah. He finally catches up to Pete at some point, but he's not the one that kills Pete, I'm pretty sure, right? Like, doesn't a crab actually get Pete?
I think a crab does, yeah. I found a hilarious note that I made. So one of the other throwaway characters is like this sailor, this old, like, drunken Scottish sailor that Pete and Christine hire to, like, take them out somewhere, and they of course kill him and like throw him out to the crabs. But the book, this author loves to describe all these throwaway characters in pretty great detail, and when he's describing the drunk Scottishman, this is how he does so. He was 6 feet 2 inches tall, a muscular, black-bearded Scot who would have graced the packet of any brand of oatmeal cereal with his powerful rippling frame.
I didn't know oatmeals were specifically like Scottish hunk branded all the time.
I was like, what the? That made me
Seamus
crack
brand
up.
Oatmeal, ladies.
Yeah, like only the hottest men grace our oatmeal tins in Scotland.
No thin, frail men shall be upset upon the oatmeal.
Yeah, there are other things that are weird, like suddenly Christine is always surprised by Pete being a murderous asshole when, like, that's just all he's been the whole time. I don't understand why it's surprising to her anymore.
Oh, by the way, if you think this builds to a point where Christine, like, finally gets one over on Pete and escapes and, like, you know, has her redemption or get out moment, no, she just dies to a crab at the end.
Yep.
There's no resolution or anything to that story. There's no learning. It's just Christine had a shitty end of her life and then a crab killed her.
Yeah.
The end.
And, like, another example of how very stupid Pete is and how he's really just like he's like that kid you went to school with who just wanted to be really edgy and evil all the time. So when they're killing someone, he carves a swastika into their cheek for no reason. Like, there is no mention of Nazis or swastikas or nationalism or racism or anything in this book at all.
I don't think the guy was even Jewish or anything, or German. I think the implication was that, like, oh, he was involved. I think he was like a crabber or something, or something like a wildfowler, and like because he attacked animals, he's not as bad as a Nazi is. I think was what it's supposed to be, but that's really round the bend the long way there to get to that point. It just seems like you carved a swastika there to like be controversial. I don't know. Like,
yeah, it's really stupid. I'm trying to find an example of the dialogue and how, you know, it only chooses sometimes to write things in, you know,
you can look for that. Well, I talk about how, like I said, the book, the crab thing just gets resolved, like, in the background when they all happen to die anyway to the military and the crab cancer. The Christine thing never goes anywhere because she just dies to a crab. I guess David Knight gets his on Pete after a while because, you know, he dies and Pete is somehow involved in making the crabs attack Pete finally or something. But it all just kind of feels like nothing ended in a satisfactory way, or not like it just kind of happens in random order and everything is chaos. And why did you even bother to like connect any dots in anything? This whole book could have been 3 chapters of Pete kidnaps and kills a bunch of people. He kidnapped and killed the wrong person this one time. That guy tracks him down, and then they all die to crabs. But the crabs also die too.
Yep.
So who really wins?
Yeah, it's
and what's the point of the story?
It's
like,
what
am I supposed to learn from it?
Yeah, it feels very pointless. It feels like there's nothing to really learn here.
I guess it's just like pulp crab horror, but even then it's not great because there's nothing compelling beyond a couple of nicely written crab torture scenes, which I'm not really looking for all the time.
Yeah.
I gotta say.
Yeah, and you know what? I did actually, in my notes, I made fun of the whole... So in the book, the author makes a point that the crabs worship the moon a couple of times, and I was like, oh, that's so dumb, but apparently that's, like, kind of real. So...
what? You mean like there's crab moon cults? What?
Yeah, like, well, maybe not in quite an organized and conscious
Please
way.
Elaborate.
But so I solicited some crab facts from my friends via Facebook, which I was hoping to get.
That's the math rock band on that tour bill.
Crab facts.
Yeah, Crab Facts on tour with Crab Altar, the black metal band, Crab Lore, the doom metal band, and then there was another one that I forgot. It was a joke I made earlier about the opener. That's how forgettable they are.
Yeah, and I was hoping. So I think I've mentioned this before, but I once worked with a bunch of marine science experts at a former job, and I was hoping to net a bunch of their comments. Of course, before any of my crab expert friends replied, I got a bunch of lovely comments about let's see. Laura says, I knew a girl who went to a bachelorette party once, started going blind and itchy in one eye, and goes to the doctor the next day. Turns out it was a crab from the crotch of the hot cop stripper from the night before.
That sounds a little bit made up somehow. It's like, and that crab's name was Albert Einstein.
Yeah, exactly. My friend Brendan says Marilyn Manson got crabs when he lost his virginity. I was like, yep, I remember reading about that too.
Actually, you know what? He sucked his own dick and got his crabs from his own self into his own mouth.
No, that part's not true. Ganesh reminds us that crabs are fucking delicious. Also, they can wield knives, and then it ended up with a bunch of people like posting videos.
I'm so sad that the crab that got Pete in the end didn't wield the executioner on him.
Yeah, what the fuck? What? Like,
at least give me some of that, like, comeuppance, like, at bare minimum.
I know, and that's also what's on the fucking cover of the book, and then it never happens. There's so crabs can hold knives in real life. Like, we're talking real crabs in current reality. And guess what this book doesn't have? Crabs wielding knives. Even though the cover of the book is a fucking crab wielding a sword. God damn it. That was something that really bothered me.
Worst bait and switch of this whole fucking thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Anyway, so after everyone got their, like, haha, crabs jokes, and my friend Cynthia, who is actually a crab scientist, like, she has degrees in this.
Crabientist.
She gave us some cool facts, and the one that I was talking about the moon, she said that crabs release their eggs in cycle with the tides because they're a species that are dependent on a fuller new moon, and they are very in tune with lunar cycles. And I was like, holy fuck, so okay. I did not think that was real. So
I guess that this book has the tiniest amount of depth to it, I suppose.
Just a little. Some other cool facts. Most crabs can regrow limbs, but it's very energy costly. And they can detach limbs at will as a means to escape predators if they feel like it's better to sacrifice them than dying completely.
I've seen videos of crabs tearing their own pincer off sometimes.
Yep. Let's see.
Other cool crab facts.
Yeah. And then Chris asked her about how a crab shell would hold up against mortars and gunfire.
Yeah, okay, because the crabs are, like, super resistant to damage in this book, and something in my head makes me think that if you made a crab bigger, the shell would just get more brittle instead of harder?
But
because you're using up more, like, surface area, so it's, like, harder to build a thicker structure.
Yeah, but as Cynthia pointed out, it depends on how long it's had to calcify since its last molt. Apparently crabs molt. And it also depends on its nutrition. And it could actually be quite beastly and fairly thick. But she did say that was all theoretical because, of course, she doesn't have any data because this is all fantasy.
Okay, but let's say all the crabs have cancer and aren't in good health. They probably wouldn't have super tough shells, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what part of the body the cancer was attacking, right? Because...
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, speaking of crab anatomy, do crabs have lips or mouths?
Oh, man, yeah.
Because this book seems to imply that crabs have mouths.
Well, I mean, they have mouths, but the book talks about their, like, luscious crab lips a couple of times, and I was like, I don't think that crab lips are, like...
That's the 70s funk band on that crab bill.
You know what? I wish I had not already made the shitty image for this episode. I wish I would have waited and made a tour poster for this crab tour.
Oh, I remember the other one. Okay, so Crab Puddle is the opener, Crab Lore, and then Crab Altar. Then we got Crab Facts and Luscious Crab Lips to close out the night.
Oh my God. I wish to make this happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it talks about their lips in this, like... I don't know, as though they're human?
They're always frothing and salivating and burbling and bubbling.
Yeah, pouted. They're always pouted. And I was like, I don't think
they got that Kylie Jenner lip treatment before they went out to murder people. Bunch of crabs in the beauty salon.
I mean, and, like, crabs have mouths, of course. And
gotta put the food somewhere.
And I think technically they have mouth parts that might be considered lips, but they are not in any way able to pout them, and they definitely don't look anything like human lips. So that was strange. I don't really know how the crab could be pouting. One of the crabs also kills someone by, like, giving them a weird crab kiss and then eating their face, and I was like, that's really dumb. Yeah, so thank you to Cynthia, our resident crab expert, for giving us some cool crab facts. And helping us understand that crabs are actually really in tune with the moon. And if they develop some form of disease and revenge-fueled sentience, they may actually worship the moon.
Yeah, so I mean, some stuff, we don't have to criticize everything about this book. There's some things that are kind of neat like that. So I guess anything related to the crab lore is kind of all right. But once again, just because the crabs are honestly just in the background to leap out from the shadows to murder every once in a while... It doesn't, I don't know, just nothing feels like well woven together in this book. It's all loose, stringy crab meat that you shredded and just kind of made a shitty salad out of that doesn't really feel like all the parts go together. Yeah. It's like you separated the mayo and the crab parts out, and I guess whatever you put into a crab salad, I don't know.
Yeah,
This metaphor is really labored.
Yeah, I like I said, I really just wish this guy had published very short horror pieces about crab murder, like, really focused in on that, because that's where the author succeeds in some way. is his descriptions of torture and murder. And like I said, maybe just like given hints about the whole, humans versus the non-human environment kind of stuff, and it would have probably been good, but instead he just gets caught up in stringing a bunch of clauses together when it doesn't make sense to do that. Like, he just loves run-on sentences, and
Spartina grass and marshy
Spartina grass and curlews. Oh, the curlews are always calling. They're always calling. The curlews
to the Spartina grass. I don't know. That just sounds like some kind of sing-songy line to me, Parrot.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly don't know that I have much more to say about this other than...
Because there isn't anything to say besides, there's a permanently rock-hard maul sword-wielding asshole that murders a bunch of people.
Yeah.
His hard dick and his maul sword just constantly splayed out before him in a quest for crab vengeance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could maybe talk about the whole animal rights group thing, but I mean,
there's kind of like an anti-lefty slants to like some of the tone of this book, like they're liberal loonies on the attack
Libby
again.
Loonies, right? Libby Loonies, that's what they call them. I forgot about that. That kind of caught me off guard because I was like, what are they saying? It's just one of those like turns
was there ever some kind of like liberal eco-terrorist group that sacrificed people to like, what is the basis for thinking like, they're at it again with their crab cults?
Yeah, I just think that since Pete has taken control of the group, there's been more kind of like eco-terrorism. The book actually starts, I'm sure, I don't know if anyone remembers me reading that one sentence about Christine hiding in the supermarket. It's because the book opens with Pete and Christine sneaking into supermarkets and injecting all the turkeys with cyanide. And then, of course, these turkeys were sold, and a bunch of people died on Christmas, I think.
Yeah.
Whole families, children, adults, everything, if they ate the turkey. And I mean, I honestly don't think any animal rights group would do that because it's pretty stupid and it doesn't actually solve anything or advance your cause. If anything, it just makes people kind of like camp down harder on their thoughts for hating you and what you stand for. So
I guess their aim was like people would be afraid of buying turkey after that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a bunch of other meat people could eat, right?
Yeah, it's a really... but the rest of this book also seems to take a shitty tone against people that are environmentally conscious or liberal in general, because most of the characters are like, those Libby Loonies at it again.
Yeah,
like you would expect them to be. It's
or
like expected
liberal
somehow.
Loonies. Yeah, I forget. But yeah, it's... Yeah, I don't know.
Was he trying to make a point about like all you environmental assholes are just ruining everything? Like what?
No,
or you're just crazy? I don't
think so.
know.
I mean, I didn't do a whole lot of research, but apparently Guy N. Smith, which sounds like the most made up name in the world, and maybe
that's
it is
the fakest shit I've ever heard.
It's like catching an alien and being like, yeah, if you're human, what's your name? And the alien's like, Guy Smith.
Yeah. I'm Humanson. Bob Humanson.
Oh my god, what if Guy N. Smith is a crab that survived?
Oh my god, Paris. Oh my god.
I think that's what happened. I figured it out. All right, Guy Smith. The jig is up. Go back to your watery lair.
We see you writing all your crab books. There's only one way you can know so much about crabs.
No,
apparently
Guy N. Smith was a prolific author.
He sure wrote a lot of crab books.
Yeah, he sure wrote a lot of books. I don't know that makes him any good, but apparently a lot of people like his stuff. In fact, we were unable to buy a physical copy of Crabs, the Human Sacrifice, because physical copies are worth like at least $120 or some shit. Like,
yeah, popular.
They're well, no, I think that there's rare because they probably didn't do like a very large pressing, and then they kind of got a cult following because they were, gory, silly stuff, and sometimes people are into that. So yeah. I don't know if you don't have anything else to say. I'm just gonna
really
go.
Don't.
I'm just gonna close this shit
it's
out.
all crab lore and crab puddles and crab scientists and crab terrorists, craberists.
Yeah, so
crabs, Paris.
The final decision is don't read this fucking book. Don't read the crab series. It's a waste of your time. That's how I feel, Chris.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I learned anything. Nothing was like, even the horror scenes, while fine, that's all they were. I've read better horror stuff that was more interesting. Everything was too loosely woven for me to care about anything, so it just seemed like a pointless exercise in its entirety. So it definitely goes on the terrible list for me.
Yeah, so thanks to Reddit user dickdastardly for suggesting it. Thanks to Cynthia for imparting real crab knowledge on us. Much appreciated.
Thank you for your crabiantist knowledge.
Yes.
Your crabolage.
And thank you, of course, to our patrons. Thank you to Dari, Greg, Veronica, Will, and Dee. They fund this show and make it possible for us to afford hosting and books each month. If you want to also be cool and become a patron, head over to patreon.com/join/terriblebookclub to check out our extra content and rewards. We do really like when people say hi and interact with us as well. So even if you're not interested or can't afford to become a patron, talking to us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is just as cool. You can also send us an email to terriblebookclub@gmail.com if you so desire. And lastly, if you enjoy the show, just do us a favor and share the show on social media, write us an iTunes review, or tell your friends about it, or all three of those things even. So all that stuff helps the show grow, helps, rope more people into this fucking garbage pile.
Well, we can talk about crabs.
Ugh. This one was really a waste of time.
Paris, do you have anything else to add on this crabby October night?
Do we want to tell anyone what the next book is? Or give them some hints?
It's definitely an interesting one. How about, we can hint at it. It's an autobiography.
Yeah, it's nonfiction.
It's a nonfiction autobiography. It's basically about some random fucking guy. You know what? Honestly, I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
If you ever want to read an autobiography about some fucking guy, here we go.
Yeah, it's just Chris, actually, props to Chris for just finding this gem on Amazon.
This might be my crowning achievement in Terrible Book Club research thus far.
Yeah, this was definitely, like, if we were talking about these terrible books as though they were some kind of gem or mineral, Chris found the rarest of gems.
Yeah, it's just you're not going to find anything like this in your standard bookstore, I believe.
And part of me feels a little bad because it's a dude's life, and, like, I can't sit here and refute the things that happened in his life, because what the fuck do I know? It's his life. I'm sure all these things really happened. But we're going to talk about how it's presented and all the writing. And Chris is going to have a special spreadsheet and some counts for us of certain things.
I'm going to have to, start data tabulating for this.
Yeah, and you better do it, because I think it's gonna yield some results. Are you gonna
unleash the crabs on me if I don't? Is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna unleash the crabs. Watch out.
Fuck. All right. Shit. All right, Paris. Well, I better get cracking on that then.
Yeah,
or I'll be cracked up by crab club.
Oh my god. Lastly, happy Halloween, everyone. This episode is coming out either the day before Halloween or the day of. So happy Halloween. Have a safe and spooky time out there. I'll be going to a lot of shows and probably not dressing up, but drinking a lot and eating a lot of candy. So I wish you all lots of booze and candy. Happy Halloween from the Terrible Book Club.
Crab bye, Paris.
Click, click, clickety, click.
Click, 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 click.
Until click next clickety click time.
Click, 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 click. Bye, Paris.